I'm trying to think it was basically, I'm trying to think of the title of it, but I was basically a guy that had cameras everywhere in my house, and I discovered them and found out that everything that I was doing was being tracked, basically, which is sort of then was used, in a Jim Carrey movie. And if you can guess the title. Pardon? Thank you. See? The Truman Show, yeah. But, and it was in December in Toronto. So I remember on one scene having to run outside and, I got about 10 feet and went, I'm going to freeze right here. But that was that. And then, yes, did a couple of movies. Oh, also, let's see, I did a movie called The Boy in Blue, which, has anybody ever seen that? Which stars Nick Cage. It's one of his early movies. Oh, wow. And he played the 19th century Canadian rower, Ned Hanlon, a real person. This is one to look for when you're out there looking through the bin for what's The Boy in Blue? But that was a film that was, really fun to make because it's 19th century, and we shot all around Ontario, and it was fun with, as I said, Nick Cage, the Dales sisters, or Jennifer Dale and Cynthia Dale. Are those names that anybody remembers? Yeah, and other, good supporting cast. And on the West Coast. Different TV projects. That was always, Vancouver was always a big location for a lot of TV and, a ton of films as well. But I did a number of shows there, and it was always fun. Vancouver's a beautiful city. I don't know if you've been to it. I recommend it. It's a really beautiful place to go visit, and it's running. And you can ski. You can be staying at a hotel in downtown Vancouver and go ski for the day. And come back. I love that. And then there's also an enormous park. I'm trying to think the name of it. It's like Stanley, yeah, which is pretty spectacular. Anyway, you didn't want to hear that. I'm not here from the travel agency. Now, if you buy these tickets, so anyway, back to you. The answer was yes.
Very cool.
Yeah, the answer is yes. I've worked in Canada and enjoy it, and worked with many Canadians down, where I live on the West Coast. And also, my wife and I have a place in Raleigh, North Carolina, Pinehurst, North Carolina, big golf area.
Cool. Now, when I was a kid, I remember you from the Dr. Pepper commercials.
Well, hello. I brought a prop. Come on. You guys want to know what those are? Who knows? Has anyone seen these commercials? Yeah, so this... I didn't get the question yet, so maybe I shouldn't answer it, should I?
How did that come about? And they were on all the time, I remember. So you must have been getting recognized everywhere, I would imagine. That
was sort of one of the first things that sort of brought me to national attention, were those spots. I had graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. I knew at that point, during those times, I wanted to be an actor. I knew before that I was wanting to pursue acting. My older brother, James Naughton, was already establishing himself in New York. And so I applied to drama school in London because I thought, hey, wouldn't it be great to study, and wouldn't it be great to live in London? And so I went over to a drama school called LAMDA, which is the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, which was kind of funny because there wasn't a lot of music involved. But it was an opportunity to study acting and really learn classical, approach, and the British approach to acting, which is which is very dissimilar to American approach, which we can talk about, but I don't think that's for another howling experience. I don't know. Where should I go with this?
My next question.
Oh, for Dr. Pepper, that was
yeah.
it. Yeah, I lost my train of thought because I was going, God, LAMDA, that was so long ago. This was so long ago. The advantage of going there was that as students, it was pretty inexpensive. I don't, for the time, and this was, in the 70s. But also we got to see every great actor on the West End. I mean, and I also worked, offhand, as they say, being paid out the back door at the Royal Court Theater. Down the street was this little show called the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which was premiering, Got to see Laurence Olivier on stage, John Gielgud, Alec Guinness, Paul Scofield on stage, which is a totally different experience, and as an acting student, you're just kind of like, oh my God. And we also had, at LAMDA, we had some of these. John Gielgud came to LAMDA, and other working actors in the West End theater come and talk to us. And so what we got a chance was to realize that these are real people, These aren't just names you've, seen or heard or films. They actually, get up in the morning and they go to work and they happen to be working in theater that night. So it gave us a chance to really realize that, that can happen. It can happen to you too. So that was that,
Cool.
And then 5 years after that experience of going to LAMDA, I stayed there 2 years. The problem was for me, I couldn't work there, couldn't really make the contacts, which is really what you want to try to do when you're starting out as an actor is who do you know? Who do you know? Who's going to be the one to get you to a door that may open or not for you? So there weren't a whole lot of contacts to be made for me as an American acting student. So I came back to New York and just started, which was the last thing I wanted to do was like start in New York as an actor, like here I am, Manhattan. Now I grew up in Connecticut, so going to New York was, something that we did as a family when I was young, and just the thought of this big, huge, the concrete jungle of Manhattan was not where I thought I'd try to start my career. But it so happened that I did start, off Broadway, auditioning for. When you come out of drama school, you think you're ready for, anything, and I felt quite prepared. And it's just so funny. As it happened, I got a job with the New York Shakespeare Festival. They did, plays in Central Park, and it was for a production of Hamlet, starring Sam Waterston. And so I was there. I used to say if there was a Tony. Now the Tonys are the Broadway awards, and we moved to the Lincoln Center, so it was technically a Broadway show, but a limited engagement. This production of Hamlet was 4 hours long, if you can imagine. We did the uncut version, the long version of Hamlet. It was a long play. I wanted them to say, why don't you say, like, bring a lunch, on the ads. But it was, there that I had a commercial agent. It was interested in sending me out for things, and one day I went and said, hey, there's 3 commercials for Dr. Pepper. Do you know what that is? I said, I'm familiar with Dr. Pepper. Yes. And they used to have different things. I mean, it used to be, so misunderstood was the whole idea of the jingle. So I went to this audition, and it was all these, New York dancers. I mean, we're talking about probably the best kind of, the best in the world, really, in terms of shows. If you've been to a Broadway show, these guys know how to dance. I mean, they've been fully trained. They're doing it all the time. They're in classes every day, or they're teaching classes. And here I am, this, schmo from LAMDA coming in. But it so happened, and it was something that I sort of took with me, was like, when you don't think you have a chance, just go in and do your thing. And it so happened I was just kind of having a good time at this audition, which they spotted and called me back, and I had another call back, and then, so it started out with like 400 guys in T-shirts and jeans at a dance audition, and I could, I wasn't trained, but had taken a few classes of different kinds of things, but I got picked for this part, which was if you can imagine this now, we shot a 60-second commercial and 2 30-second commercials, total of 2 minutes, 22-day shoot. Now, 22-day shoot, many of you know, maybe you've been involved in little films or independent films. You can make a big old movie in 22 days, but we had 2 minutes to shoot this. The reason for the length of it was a coast-to-coast movie. It was sort of a Pied Piper idea. And they were introducing this new concept of what it was like to not only drink Dr. Pepper, but to be a pepper. And I was going to be the pepper guy. And I was going to start in New York and end up in San Francisco, dancing across America, collecting all these new peppers. Well, that was the idea of the concept, and it was, it was a big flash success the first year. So we knew when we made these that they were pretty cool. We shot in different places like St. Louis, where the big arches, just landmarks, down in New Orleans in the French Quarter. Finished at the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. This is the West Coast for me, okay? This is the East Coast. If you want to go this way. Okay, anyway, so, and we thought they'd be, well received, but they were a big deal. And then, so that ended up as a sort of a 4-year contract for me, or 4 one-year contracts. Each year, and this company were the good old boys down in Dallas, Texas, Waco, Texas, where Dr. Pepper was supposedly headed. So you've heard more than you want to hear about Dr. Pepper, but it was really cool in the 70s, and we had all kinds of people who wanted, once we were on the air, people who wanted to become, or who didn't mind being in these commercials. So we would always cast each year new faces, like, I'm trying to think of who were all the famous people.
Mickey Rooney was one.
Mickey Rooney did a spot, which was the worry for the advertising agency was we weren't going to sing any lyrics. We were just going to whistle the tune. And do you think it would catch, will audiences understand what we're doing? It's like, well, we're completely covered in Dr. Pepper. I think they'll know what it's about. But, his agent was, you have him for 1 hour. This is Mickey Rooney now. This is Mickey Rooney. We're going, yeah. You have him for an hour. And so we're at this little rented stage downtown New York at 14th Street on the east side, not in a great neighborhood. And Mickey Rooney's, arrives. Well, the hour came. We couldn't get rid of this guy. 3 hours into it, he's like, and I got this other idea. We're doing the Mickey Rooney story, and we're going, Mickey, we got other stuff to shoot. We're gonna have to, move on. Couldn't believe it. So it's the difference between what agents tell you and when you actually get the person there. It's night and day difference, generally speaking, And so that was a cool idea. So that basically then, that put me on the map. These were national commercials, so they're on TV, both East and West Coast. And in those days, when this was before they got wise to, you'd be it'd be a national network. Oh, good morning.
Nice.
Hi, let's try one more time for a howl. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's what it took. It took a little of that, didn't it? So,
I think it's really cool that you had a top 5 hit on the radio. Can you tell us a little bit about the origins of that?
Yes. Does anybody know the name of that particular endeavor?
Making It.
Very close. Makin It. Yeah, you're not making. You want to make breakfast? You can make. No, it's really, that was a sex? So, wow. We went 180 right there. We have minors in the audience. But that was a series on ABC. That's really what, from the Dr. Pepper, these producers from LA had this show based on Saturday Night Fever called Makin It, a pilot with an 13-episode order already at Paramount. And so they said, we're going to do a series, and we're just going to, ABC gave them 13 shows to do and figure it out. So they came to New York, where I was living at the time, and said, we want you to be in this show. And it was, as I said, it was a spin-off of Saturday Night Fever, which was obviously a huge hit. So went out to L.A., Hollywood, in Paramount Studios, started the show, and it turned out that the part I was cast for, there were basically two of us. The guy who was the young guy working hard and going to the disco, and his older brother who didn't get along with, mom and dad, but was like the disco guy. That was the original part I was cast for, with the older brother who was at the disco. And it turned out that whoever they cast in the younger brother role hadn't had any experience whatsoever, not just a little bit of, I don't know where they got this guy. Maybe it was set in New Jersey. I think they got him from New Jersey. And so they, day before we're going to shoot, now sitcoms, 3 or 4 camera shows, are shot in front of a live audience 1 day a week. And the other 4 days you're rehearsing and tweaking the script or getting major rewrites. So this was the day, and you have to stay on that schedule. We hadn't even shot the pilot, and we're already falling behind with recasting. And I was freaked out. They called me into the office. I go, I'm next, because we heard, I forget the fellow's name, Frank. I think his name was Frank. What happened to Frank? I go, Frank's not coming back after lunch. And then they said, they want to see you at 2. And I was like, I'm next. And I went in and they said, we want you to play Frank's part, and we're going to recast your role right now. I went, wow, okay, I'm here to talk about this title song. What's the title about? They go, well, the show's called Makin It. It's a song that's been written by these guys, Dino Fikaris and Freddie Perrin, who have these songs that are currently, well, they have music in the soundtrack for Saturday Night Fever, but they've also written Reunited, Peaches and Herb, Shake Your Groove Thing. You know these songs, some of you, I hope. Hello? Oh. Yeah, so they were these heavy-duty music makers. So I said, I'd love to get a chance at singing the title song, because now I'm playing sort of the title character of the guy who's going through life making it. So these producers were able to, pull strings anywhere, called them up. They said, yeah, come on over tomorrow. I go over to their studio, and I listened and met them, and they said, well, here's some tracks, and we'll, come back tomorrow, and we'll see how you do. And they said, we've kind of got the 4 seasons sort of, in mind for this. I go, the 4 seasons to sing Makin It? Well, I changed that idea. So I just sort of listened to the song. It made sense that this was a guy, it was sort of autobiographical, This was the idea of the series is, hey, I'm doing this, I'm working here, I'm studying, living at home, and I'm making it. Well, so I went back that next day and sang for them, and they went, where are you from? I said, Connecticut. He goes, it sounds a little Connecticut. I went, oh, I went to school in Philly. He goes, give me Philly. I want Philly. So I'm in a studio going, give him Philly, That's the kind of direction you get from guys, So that's what I did. I gave him Philly. So I'm making it, so I sing this song, and they go, yeah, let's do it. So it was sort of Thanksgiving weekend for us. Thanksgiving's in November. And over that Thanksgiving weekend, we knocked out this song in about 10 hours or so, tracking, 24 tracks. I've never been in a 24-track studio. Well, actually, I had. I sang the jingles for the Dr. Pepper stuff, so I felt like I was trained. I was qualified. And so RSO label released the film, the song, the single, on a 45. Now, RSO is Robert Stigwood organization. They had this little group called the Bee Gees, which was their main group. And so they had the rights, and they were going to release it, and it was on their record label, and I signed a contract with RSO. Little did I know they wouldn't be in business very long, because the Bee Gees wanted out. This is back, really at the beginning of those times when bands were going, wait a second, why do we need you? It's not like today, this is before computers. You couldn't have just a program and sing it, and make your little sound studio at home and make your own album, as many people have, and darn well, too. This was, you had to go through the 24-track, you had to buy studio time, things were expensive. So whatever, the Bee Gees had a falling out with RSO, so RSO said, we're just going to disband the label. And out with, many of their other artists was my Makin It song. But it started at like 80-something on the charts, kept, climbing up the top 40, went to number 5, and I was looking going, I'm ahead of Eric Clapton. How'd that happen? And it was quite an extraordinary experience.
Did you get to do any concerts or live?
I did some live stuff. I did live, Merv Griffin live from Las Vegas. Merv Griffin had a show, a variety show, and that's, none of this stuff is fun. Rockin' New Year's Eve with Dick Clark. Right. Saturday night, what was another one? American Bandstand I was on, another Dick Clark production. Super nice, really nice guy. Because, like at Merv, you don't get to rehearse. they're going, okay, you're up after Lola Falana, and Rich Little's going to do some comedy, and then you. Oh? So you kind of look, you say, well, let's see, where is this even? The audience is filled, 300 or 400 people, studio television audience. We're live from Las Vegas, supposedly live. I mean, it's pre-recorded. And, you look out, and it's a skinny stage, and it goes, like many showrooms in Las Vegas, it goes for miles in either direction. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to have to fill that stage, just me, singing to tracks, with a live mic. And you can see it. It's, it's on YouTube or something. And it looks like a guy in a race, That's me trying to, as I said, unrehearsed stuff. It's fun to do.
Right. Now, American Werewolf in London.
Heard of it?
Yes. First of all, for an 80s movie, it does not feel like it if you watch it now. It still holds up. The effects were ahead of its time. The acting was amazing. How did you get that part?
That was one of the easier things I've ever had to, sort of secure, was that it wasn't a big screen test. I've done tests and things for projects I didn't get. I mean, we can have that list, but and those were always, pretty involved. This was not. This was just an arrangement through an agent calling John Landis, who was looking for his two leads. This was his project that he had written when he was 21 years old, and he needed to find the two guys, as they were calling him. I need to cast the boys because Rick Baker needs them. Rick Baker was, of course, on board. These were they were collaborating together, John and Rick, on this movie, and he needed to. Rick needed the guys as soon as possible to start torturing them, which is what happened to us. So John just basically in his office at Universal sat down and we talked about just things and let me get to know you. He had already been coming off of Animal House and the Blues Brothers, big hits. So you don't really know, you're sitting in a waiting room going, I don't really know what this director looks like, let alone I was quite surprised to see we were about the same age, and that here we are in 1980, October, and we're talking about this movie. So he's a very funny, high-energy guy. He gives me the script and says, read this, call me tomorrow, writes down this office number. This is all unusual in terms of what my experience was as an actor, like how things work. Everybody has their own way. And I went, okay, I'll read the script and call you tomorrow. So I'm going home going, hey, I want to read this An American Werewolf in London. He didn't say much about it in our meeting. And so I read it, and it was, pretty cool. There's like one line of David transforms into a werewolf. Turn the page. Oh, scene 6. So you see, there wasn't a big, long description of what that was going to entail. And I called him the next day, and he said, so do you want to be a werewolf? Which was sort of like, the tagline, and wouldn't you like to be a pepper, too? So he was saying, would you like to be a werewolf? I went, okay, I think I would. What's that going to entail? He says, you got to get over to Rick Baker's shop right away. And I went over to Rick Baker's shop, which was this like rented space, because Rick, in the last few years, I mean from now going back, had his own building with over 100 employees, 7 Oscars on his, but when I met him, he had this rented garage space with a bunch of look like high school graduates who were keen to be apprentices in the makeup business, which wasn't a business, but they wanted to learn from Rick, and Rick taught these young guys what was going to happen. And I went in to his shop and said hi. He goes, who are you? I'm David Naughton. He goes, which role are you playing? I said, I'm playing the role of David. And he goes, I feel sorry for you.
Oh,
that should have been my first clue. You feel sorry for me? Well, so we got right into doing the makeup, which he says, now this is going to, there wasn't like anything I could do research-wise about who's Rick Baker. And, let me Google Rick Baker and see who he's worked with and what should I know about Rick. Nothing. You just kind of, and at that time you just kind of go all in. You're all in or you're not. and particularly for when it comes to this kind of special makeup. You can't hold back, no hesitations. What do you want me to do now? Okay, we're going to do, and they did molds, and I'm sure many of you have seen scenes or maybe the extra scenes, so I don't need to explain it, but we did molds of my arms and my legs, and you're in a quick drying vat for like 20 minutes, and then you try to pull your leg out of it, you try to pull your arm out of it, and then they have the beginning of what's going to be a mold of your exact arm or leg, and that was all interesting and fun. But then it said, now we're going to do your head. I go, my head? Yeah, we're going to do it 5 times, some straight, some neutral, some with growl, some with snarl, and it's going to take 20 minutes or so a piece each time, and we don't have to all do them in one day. Oh, okay. I may not come back. And found out what that was, and that's a whole different experience when you get a mold of your head. It's not fun, It's you got to trust that they know what they're doing. I said, have you done it before? It said, we did it once. Oh, is he still here? Yeah, he's still here. So they do, and they do this mold, and it's just like if you broke your arm and they put this, like a cast of it. They do that to your head, and you're just basically breathing out of your nose, and you're waiting for them to take the damn thing off. And they go, this is great, So that was it. This was all before we even started shooting the film, But I wanted to just impress upon how quick this thing, the beginning and to the end was. I met John Landis in October. The following August, the movie was released. So, and in that time, we went to England and shot this 10-week or so movie. Had an editor there. There were just a few of us with work permits, and they had apparently already scouted locations for Paris, our film, in case we couldn't get, because we were fighting with, the company was fighting with the British Equity to get permission for work permits for us to be there to make this movie, where they were insisting John, interview and audition other actors for these roles. They go, oh, sure, we'll hold auditions for those roles. The molds are already being made back in L.A., but yeah, we'll do whatever it takes to get these work permits, which is what you have to do. You have to jump through a lot of hoops to get things done. But they were scouting locations in France in case we couldn't. Now, every other role and all the jobs and all the crew are all British, and yet it was still a struggle to actually get permission to shoot this movie. So they go, well, what's the movie about? And John wouldn't give the script. These are all supposedly, it's funny, he wouldn't get the script to them, although it was all over Hollywood when he was trying to raise financing for it. They were keeping it a secret. I don't know if they would have given him permission if they read the script. What actually happens? These people are getting killed. So.
How was Landis as a director?
He's a ball of energy. He still is. I mean, he's still a very bright guy with tons of energy. He likes to play jokes. He's always putting you on. That's probably not everybody's, way to work. It's like, be sincere, tell me, but he's not like that, and that keeps the atmosphere light. We were dealing with subjects, the undead, and, for me personally, in my little arc of a role of going, I had to come up with how do you play this character in a way that's believable. That's always, the first most, usually what you start with, and truthful. And I always saw this character of David Kessler as a guy with a terminal illness. He's been given news like he's terminal, and how do you deal with that? That you're dealing with, you've been given a death sentence, and you don't believe it. And that was more helpful than you're going to turn into a werewolf, and you're part of this thing, this undead and the unnatural. So I just tried to keep that sort of grounded in that way, and it helped. One of the questions I get often was, did I know Brian Glazer? These are the guys in the pub. And there's Rick Mayall, who was, I guess, had quite a good career. He's since passed away. In Britain as a comic, and people ask me. In fact, we were in Manchester, England last weekend, and that was a lot of the questions I was asked is, did I know Rick Mayall? Because he was, you know, a guy that everybody, very popular there. And I said, he wasn't. I think he just was happy to have the gig because he didn't have any lines, but he was one of these characters in the pub. And how well did we get to know them? I said, well, you know, we were, you know, taking the American not method, I don't like to use the word method approach, but we weren't friends in the film, so there was no need to be chummy with them off camera either. You know, we were going to stay, and it's not hard to do, is stay, you know, as an outsider when you're an American working in British soil. You know, you feel it pretty instantly, and it helps.
Any of you guys have any
Anybody
questions?
have questions? Thanks for your attention. Yes.
Just wondered, you said you had to have work permits to be in England, to work in England. Was there any struggles with the scene where you're trying to get arrested and you need to yell out certain...
About Prince Charles and Queen Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's what people have asked me to write on my photos. And I go, this was in Manchester. I go, could you write down Prince Charles is a faggot? I'm trying to leave on Monday. I want to get out of here, you know? Could you write, oh, that's all right. I go, he's now the king. Have you read the papers? So, yeah, that's a funny scene. You know, when you're in a film, you think nothing can go wrong. And that's one of the dangers, is that when you're rolling and you're set up and it's all lit, you know, that's where accidents can happen on sets. When you go, wait a second, we're making this movie. It's a make-believe, but it's our reality. And so nothing should happen because it's not in the script. But sometimes things do happen. Fortunately, that's not, you know, that scene went off pretty well. Everybody's an actor or an extra atmosphere in that particular scene. We shot it pretty quickly. There are a number of scenes in the film where we had to shoot pretty quickly. You know, I should tell you, like, the very first day of shooting was all the porn stuff. It's John Landis's idea of what a porn movie must. Now, if you listen to that dialogue, it's, you know, it's crazy, hilarious. But so the first day, the whole crew almost walked off the movie because going, what are we making? He goes, no, this is going to be playing. No, you guys. And so there was always that sort of distance between John and his vision and the crew because John was highly animated. I guess in a word, he liked to yell, you know, and it's not sort of the British way, I guess. But they were like freaked out. This guy is out of his mind. And this is the first day. He says, no, it gets better. I kill all these people, and there's all this kind of neat stuff. And anyway, so that's, you know, just one of those things with John. He'd always yell, more blood, no, more blood. He had a thing with Rick. Excuse me, where, you know, during the transformation, which I should tell you, that was the last thing we shot. We shot the entire movie and just had the transformation to shoot. So it was really, I wasn't done with like, hey, we're coasting to the end. It was like climbing the mountain. The hardest thing for me to do on this show was the last week, which is unfair. But so we wrapped everybody, had the transformation, and Rick is as people have known, and we realized very early, this guy is a perfectionist. You know, he is an artist. I'm not going to be ready ever, you know, until he says, because that was the deal he made with John, was give me a lot of time and the money I need to make the effects that I think that you want, because nobody really knew how it was going to look. It hasn't been done before. And even if you storyboard, and you know what storyboarding, where you're basically drawing out pictures of the scene, he had this transformation storyboarded to give himself a reference point on where's, you know, the character at this point. And it was nice for me to look at going, yep, start, yep, oh, he gets really bad, ooh, the end, yes. So I knew, because I'd have 10 hours a day of makeup for 5 days for this transformation scene at the end. And, you know, the calls would be at like 5 or 4:30 a.m., you know, pickup to go to the makeup. You know, you drive, you know, to get to the studio. We were using Twickenham Studios, which is sort of in West London, and have plenty of time to think about what it was going to be like that day, because I'd be sitting in this makeup chair forever waiting for John or Rick to say, you know, you're ready. He never said, you're ready. In fact, he was still, touching up. You're walking out the door and, we're going to go shoot now, Rick. No. And John would be just like, okay. The crew would be called at like 2 p.m, small crew. What are we doing? We're on this set that looks like the apartment, and we do a couple of takes of whatever it was or whatever point in that transformation was being done, and John would go, perfect, we got it, that's it. And Rick would go, no, wait, what are you talking about? This took me 4 months to make. And John goes, and? That's what John is like. And I've got it. No, can't we shoot? He goes, shoot what? I'm not going to use it. No, I took, we're going, Rick. And I'm going, Rick, it'll be okay. Can I get out of this now? Because it's not fun. For a while it's fun, and then it's no fun. And then there's nothing you can do about the fact that you're past the no fun part. You're still going to be here for 5 or 6 more hours. And it was. Any other?
How much trepidation did you feel about the scene where you're waking up with the wolves?
A lot of trepidation. A lot. Think of a lot, think more. That was one of these one-offs, as they call them. I was going to do this once, and that, at least according to me, that doesn't mean a whole lot. But it was a set that was built at the zoo, and I have some stories about the zoo. I should tell you, like the zoo, we're in. When I'm running across and grab the red coat and run, I go, why do we need all those extras up there? They go, those aren't extras, the zoo's open. What? Come on. We overstayed our the allotted time, and then the zoo opens. You have until 2 hours before it opens to shoot this little scene. But they had other things. They always add stuff. Well, while we're here, why don't we, so there was that stuff. There was the lady that I come out from behind the bush, and there's the lady, who doesn't say anything, and I just go, excuse me. Well, they tell an extra, they get this lady who's an extra for the day. Now, she's just there to make a few bucks, and she doesn't know what she's necessarily going to be asked to do, if anything. But they ask her if she'd come walking down the path, stop, the man's going to come out from behind, say something to you, you don't have to reply, and then he's just going to dive and exit this little thing, dive behind the bush. Okay. Well, she didn't realize, they don't tell her that I'm going to be naked. They didn't tell me I was going to be naked. No, yeah. So she was freaked out. In fact, if you look, her eyes are like, oh my God. They're up in the, and they just stayed there. Cut. She's like, can I look now? Yes, you may look now, ma'am. That was one, and the naked American man stole my balloons. I've had to write many times on pictures. That kid's about 50 now, I'm sure. And the wolves, which was your question originally. I think it's time for a howl. What do you think? 1, 2, 3. Oh! How's that? Are you picking that up on your recording? That's good. So it was a one-off, basically. I said, I'm going to just do this once. They go, okay, we're going to bring in the wolves. And I go, are they? They go, well, they're not tame, but they've been fed. Swear, that was the answer I got. Oh, okay, they've been fed. And I didn't ask the next question, what did you feed them? But there were 3 of them, 2 females and a male, supposedly. One of the females was supposedly coming into season, as it were. And, it's like, could you make this any, more difficult? I was supposed to wake up, see them, they see me. Of course, they saw me before I saw them. They didn't act that way, though. And then I was supposed to get out, and I said, there's no door. So they said, no, you got to go up and out over the top. Oh, okay. We're doing this once. I'm not getting back in there with it. And they said, just no large or loud noises and no fast movements. And I went, well, there'll be no loud noises, but I'm not exactly going to wait around for these wolves. And so it worked, So many scenes in this film worked the first time. We've realized that here's a scene in Piccadilly Circus. There's a big car crash. We didn't have permission for this scene. This was like a scene what they call a stolen scene, where, what do you mean you can't get permission? He says, everybody, this is a major point in the film. So at the pre-dawn hours one day on the set, on the shooting schedule, with cameras mounted all over Piccadilly Circus, with stuntmen and all these little cars on the 5 avenues that converge on Piccadilly Circus, this giant roundabout, we shot this scene, and I had to be there to see this thing that they were describing, going, this is going to be good, Dave. You want to see this one, yeah? I went, okay. So, action. You see this one, all these sounds, crashes, boom. Then you're cut, and they all drove away. And it was gone in less than 3 minutes. And if anybody had picked up like, there's a major accident. Oh, no, never mind. You know. Well, there was this major accident in Piccadilly Circus, and nobody, nobody knew the difference. We got that. They had another set built to look like Piccadilly, where they went in and did all the close-up stuff that they needed with, the thing with John in it. John goes, that's the director. I don't know if you've ever read that, but there's a scene in the movie where he's in the, he's being one of the many victims of the buses in the crash, and he had to do a stunt. So he goes back through like a breakaway glass and into a building or a shop of some kind. That's John Landis. I think he was a big Alfred Hitchcock fan, which he was. He had to appear in the movie somewhere. And that's it. It was a lot of fun and games, folks. But, one of the fun things about it was being, on location. You don't have a lot of Hollywood pressure. You don't have, people. But our executive producers were John Peters and Peter Goober, who were guys, that had obviously big careers. And they came over. And I just remember the day they did. It was so weird. It was like, who are these guys coming in on our movie, Because we felt like we were making this little picture all by ourselves with, fun. And we had Jenny Agutter, who's kept going, I don't understand you guys, she was quite a good sport too, because there were Griffin and me and Rick. Well, Rick, we never saw Rick. He was off somewhere, tweaking the hairs off one of the wolves. And I don't know. Anything else? I should just tell you, yes, you had a question.
You and Griffin seemed to have, you had great chemistry during the movie. Have you remained friends?
Well, that's what you always plan on doing.
Yeah. And have they come to you two guys to say, hey, we want you two guys together in a film together again? Or?
No, it's sort of like, I learned this on Makin It, when, that was the first show I was on where I had a family unit, where, and you feel like, we feel like family. They cast us as family. I guess we're going to stay together, aren't we? You have that, you have that sort of false idea like we'll stay in touch. And it's the same, when you're wrapped, see you, sign out. I mean, that's the sort of weirdness of filmmaking and, working as an actor is like, he's not really your, my best friend. But Griffin's great. He's not into doing these shows. I go, why not, Griffin? Come on. Together again. David and Jack appearing at, FRIGHTMARE in the Falls. Come on. I know.
You guys would be great as buddy cops.
What, buddy cops? You chase him. No, you chase him. No, you chase him. I got the car. Yeah, I think it's 2 questions per show. I think are you on your second? Oh, okay, you have 1 question left?
At the time, David, did you have any idea that it was going to become the massive classic that it's...
No, we thought it was going to be scary. We were hoping it was going to be scary, but, and one of the things that we got criticized for was, what's with all this comedy? This is a time, when John Landis wrote this script pretty brilliantly, which is funny to start with, but get ready, folks. As soon as we get attacked, it's going to get dark, and it does. But then Griffin comes back in various forms of decay with that same sense of humor, that same kind of buddy stuff, and it was funny because on the inside, Griffin was hating the makeup. Like, wow, I'm in this really cool movie with John Landis movie, and I look like this. We went, yes, you do, and all Rick would say to him is, did you read the script? You did read. This is the part where you decay. But so we had, I mean, how do you predict anything? You know, movies with much bigger budgets than what we were doing, you know, are usually earmarked to be, this is going to be a smash. Studios who are experts, and, you know, look at all the flops in the world, how many times, you never know. And I'll tell you, this wasn't a hit right off the bat. This wasn't a right out of the gate released. John knew he has a following because of the Blues Brothers, which was, you know, a massive global film, totally different. Kentucky Fried Movie is another wacky thing. So he was into the comedy music thing. Thriller, of course, which was, you know, coming, well, it obviously wasn't out, it came out after ours, but, you know, so people were going to see a John Landis movie thinking it was going to be a yuck, you know, a lot of laughs. And so the poster said, from the director of Animal House, a different kind of animal. That's what his, you know, marketing strategy was. This movie is not, don't come in here thinking this is going to be, oh, you'll laugh until you don't, you know. And a lot of people left. I saw people leaving, it was way too, whatever, horrific. I was scared. I go, well, stick around because it gets scarier, you know. So we didn't know. I certainly had no idea. It was just a couple of, just an anecdote. The first time I saw the movie was alone at Universal because I was going to be doing some publicity. And I said, well, I got to see what, you know, I remember my experience shooting this movie, but what you shoot and what you see are always so different, you know. And this is one of those films where everything we shot is on the screen. I mean, they're not bonus scenes left and to 15 minutes cut out of the movie. It's a tight 96 or whatever it is. And we shot every scene that was written by John, with the exception of a few ad libs. Thank you very much. Like, it's a cold and a wet out here. Thank you, I'll take that. But very few, you know. But that's the thing. And so when it came time to premiere, it was like August 1981. We're in Times Square in New York. And I bring my parents to our opening night in Manhattan, the Lowe's Theater in New York City, Times Square. And there's all this press there and some of these big film critics, Siskel and Ebert, those guys that used to be big film critics. So I'm spending the time, they go, you got to go talk, because there's always publicity people going, you need to go speak to such and such now. I'm going, I got to tell my parents what this movie's about, you know. I'm trying to prepare my mother for what she's about to see. But what I didn't realize, I really had to prepare my father for what he was about to see. Because afterwards, I remember he was asked by someone, an interviewer, what did you think of the movie? And he said, I don't know what to say. Perfect, Dad, thanks, that's all he has. That's all I got from my dad on that one. So this is not a movie that was really made for you, I think is how I started. Oh boy. But that's it. You know, I think, as I said, it didn't start as a hit. There was mixed reviews, and the criticism being, what about this horror comedy, you know, juxtaposed? And but Rick's makeup was made it a must-see for people, you know. That transformation scene holds its own as far as never really been done in bright light, not with trick cameras or, you know, sleight of hand. It happened right in front of you, and we filmed what had happened. Rick's brilliance of, you know, making a hand that stretches. It's not like a balloon where it'll just distort. I mean, they built this arm, which they wouldn't give me, of course. Can I have the arm? No. And all these other effects, you know, and it's pretty special. So it blew people's minds. They would see it again and again. And, you know, it made a lot of people want to become makeup artists and special effects artists. I don't know if there are any in the room, but, you know, some people gave it a lot of thought. Like, that's what I want to do. And there's nothing really more flattering, you know, really, than to have somebody say, that was so good, I want to do it now. So that's what Michael Jackson said. You know, Michael, come on. There was a point where he was doing Pepsi commercials. And I said, I did Dr. Pepper, he's got to do Pepsi. I do this transformation, now he's got to do Thrill. I go, what the heck are we talking about, Michael? Come on, get your own damn thing.
He was a huge fan. Did he ever contact you? I know he hired John because of...
Yeah, he didn't call me to discuss.
Oh.
But I met him at a thing. This was when my song was happening, my record. He came, but he was so shy, so incredibly shy. You'd try to go to talk to him, and he'd just be, like some of these great performers, and he, talk about the king of pop. He'd just stand there like, "Are you here for the dance lesson?" That's the kind of vibe he'd give off. And you go, "That's Michael Jackson you're talking to." He was so withdrawn and just like, "Hi." Very, very sweet. A tragedy. Yes?
I was just wondering, just to change topics, working on Seinfeld, how that was.
Seinfeld this was, I think, the second season, 91 or 92. So they weren't exactly runaway stars at this point. The reason I say that is, they still had that actor angst that are we going to get renewed? Do they like us? But it was fun. It was a fun show. It was funny to be on. Larry David, who was the executive producer, he cast me, I think, because we had done a show in a couple of years prior to that, before he became like Larry David, the executive producer writer. He was a performer on a show called Fridays, which was a show that was live TV. I mean, live. We did it live on the air. And it was sort of a takeoff on Saturday Night Live, which I'm sure you've seen over these years. Yeah. But this was Fridays, which was a little brother of the show in an attempt. But he was one of the cast members. And so he knew me from working together on that show. But it was really, it's a fun show, and it wasn't for everybody then, but it's, again, another one of those things that I think has grown in its appreciation.
Was it Michael Richards on that show?
Michael Richards was on Fridays as well, yeah. So, you kind of look through it and you see, look through a person's resumes and go, hey, well, there's a thing, on the IMDb app, I'm not sure if you know, that's the international movie database. And you see where it says connections. There's the connections little, which I like to look at too, going, what do you mean we work together? On what? And what it does, it says you might have 5 connections where you worked with the same person twice and the other person worked.
Kevin Bacon?
Yeah, it's sort of like that, but well, I think we're about close to running this out of time, and I think I've milked the Howl thing a little bit to the very bitter end. But should we do one more for posterity on 1, 2, 3? Music to my ears. Thanks for coming out, folks. Appreciate it.